It's interview time! Ding! I feel like I'm being very misleading here. I'm posting this here because the YouTube now is very much the central base of operations of everything I do. Everything ends up on here. It's mostly video content. I'm not writing that much these days. Mostly because I think that I'm better at the video content than the writing content. So while I did interview Cassian, the creator of Polly Pictures, an amazing, funny, pun-filled, sci-fi filled, polyamorous, asexual, many different permutations of the alphabet soup of LGBTQ2AA, etc. webcomic. It is up on the Sexy and Geeky blog, which I don't really update that much anymore, but it's where anything text-based will go, as well as the Patreon. So there's a link to it below. I'm sorry this looks somewhat misleading, but I did do the interview, so I figured I'd say it here in the main forum. Also, I know I did it a while ago, so I'm sorry this took so long to get up. It's been a really busy couple weeks. Also, you may notice that I've been posting a lot more videos than usual. That's because Drag Race Season 7's about to start, and that's because I want to get everything online from Season 6 before Season 7 starts, so we can do Season 7 as very quickly out the door as we can. I've no idea how long that will be, because I don't know when it'll hit Netflix, I don't know if it'll hit another streaming service, I don't know if we could afford to watch it in the way that it wants us to. All I know is that because I'm not American, I don't get to watch it immediately. Anyway, this is not about that. This is about Cassian and their amazing comic, Polly Pictures. Like XKCD, it is a simplistic, minimalistic comic with stick figure drawings instead of like full, colourful, detail things, and it allows the focus to be more on the dialogue. Also, you have characters, they just have very minimal traits like hats and beards and things. Unlike XKCD, however, it's entirely shot on backgrounds, like photos, and it allows for really cool, just little... It's like Arietti or The Borrowers, because everything's like people on shrunk surfaces and dealing with things as other things, like an eraser that is the sofa. It's visually delightful, it's very cute, and when it's not being incredibly funny, it's being very poignant. And often it can do the both at the same time, which is quite lovely. And it puts forward a concepts I hadn't thought of, like the Doctor from Doctor Who has had multiple girlfriends, multiple wives over his life, and he never really broke up with any of them. Even the dead ones, who aren't actually dead some of the time, because A, travels through all time and space, and B, because they just go somewhere else? Maybe? I don't know. Rose Tyler ended up in her own fan fiction, which was just weird. But there's a comic about that puts forward the idea of parallel monogamy as an explanation of the Doctor's relationships, which is super fascinating as a concept I've never heard of before. But it makes sense. If you're not in a triad and you don't actually have group intercourse, then polyamory within multiple two-person only relationships would be parallel monogamy, which is an interesting idea. There's a lot of interesting ideas in this. It's super fun. And I love that. I love brain food. I love funny, intelligent, or interesting jokes that try to go places. So this week I recommend Polly Pictures. There is a link to it below, and as well as the Patreon below. And there's a link to my interview with the creator Cassian, where I ask questions such as comedy, art styles, knitting, a lot of knitting. Oh, good lord, Cass can knit. There are some beautiful pictures of knitting. And also what it's like for them to be AAA. Asexual, agender, aromantic. Because I kind of feel for agenderness, but not the others. And I think it's fascinating to be polyamorous and aromantic and asexual. Because that's the thing. People often think about asexuality and aromanticism, well, they don't really think about aromanticism as a problem, as a very black or white thing, as you are or you aren't. But no, grey aces are a thing, grey A's are a thing. There's a spectrum. There's spectrums within spectrums, which is just called a spectrum. A spectrum is already full of spectrums, that's the point. It was really fascinating to talk to them about their work, how it started, and how they view mainstream media and its lack of certain representations. We also give some of our own favourite recommendations for some queer-centric webcomics. Polly Pictures is having its 5th anniversary this year, and it has over 200 comic strips out now. So, it's awesome, but it's also really fast and easy to get through. I blitzed through it in a day. Hungrily, I was loving it. So, yeah, go forth, check it out, and have a great day. Probably see you tomorrow with more drag riffs or other videos. Want to help us build a 27-bedroom polyamorous love fortress of doom on the moon? And feed our cat? Please support us on Patreon.